Buenos días a todas y a todos. Bienvenidos a esta séptima sesión de nuestro seminario internacional Venezuela en las luchas, pasado colonial.
Good morning to all. Welcome to the seventh seminar of our international seminar, Venezuela and the Struggles, Colonial Heritage, and Community Revolution. As we said last week, the seventh session is going to focus on the struggle for alternative communication, which has been one of the central elements of these last years. And I would like to say, before we start, to introduce some comments. In Venezuela, one of the trademarks of the Bolivarian Revolution ever since 1999 was the passage from representative democracy to the protagonistic democracy. And that step embodied the incorporation of several forms of participation. From 2002, well, we need to remember that there was a coup attempt against President Chavez, and for a couple of hours he was defeated by a military coup. And ever since then, we identified that one of the major participants of that coup d'etat were the mass media, the mainstream media in Venezuela, who jointly with the private channels, private outlet, and transnational mainstream media acted as agents for disinformation, and they also disseminated the coup mongers, the coup d'etat, and they silenced all kinds of mobilization or the rejection from the people to this coup d'etat. And one of the images that will always remain in the memory of a Venezuelan is that the day of the coup d'etat, President Chavez addressed the vast majority of the country to deliver a message, and the private outlet, they sabotaged the transmission, they intervened, they divided the screen, and later they just took the transmission off air. And one of the most important things that we will never forget is after Chavez was put in jail, there was popular mobilization. People took to the streets from the neighborhoods, from the peasant communities, and that was not broadcasted by the mainstream media. The public TV station was seized by the military by force so that they could not broadcast what was happening. And I say all this because ever since then, it was clear for us that we needed to have alternative outlets, alternative TV stations in the hands of the people. And we started building legislation and public policies oriented towards the socialization of the audiovisual channels, TV stations. We started approving and creating new communitary TV stations and communitary radio stations that started to pop up all around the country. And some of them are alternative outlets. So today we will have the opportunity to see some of these experiences. First, there were created communitary radios, then TV stations, and then it also took over the press, graffitis, and also the TV screens, the screens of the computer screens, the mobile phones, tablets, and of course, we also covered the social media. So today we will see firsthand some of experiences of this endeavor. We will have our friends from ALBA TV who have been accompanying us from the beginning. We will have also our friend of ANMCLA, which is the National Association of Communitary Free and Alternative Outlets. And we will have our friends from UTOPIX. They have been developing tools for in different areas and graphics and symbolic areas. And we will have our friend Orlenys who is an influencer, a social network influencer, and is a militant of the Bolivarian Revolution. Daddy, would you like to say some introductory words?
Alternative media means alternative world vision, which challenges the existing world order. There are two examples, Telesur and Radio Habitat. Telesur was launched in 2005 under the government of Hugo Chavez, with the aim of being a Latin socialist answer to CNN, and of defending the Bolivarian Revolution, in which oil resources are controlled by Venezuelan people. Thus, it has challenged the domination of transnational capital. Radio Habitat, the voice of the Cuban Revolution, began as an underground private radio station nestled in the mountains in the eastern Cuba. It was founded by Ernesto Che Guevara on February 24th in 1958. The first broadcast lasted only 20 minutes.
La primera
Yet
transmisión
it
duró
became
solo 20 minutos.
a landmark
Se
when
transformó
almost all of
en una
Cuban
referencia
media
cuando todos los medios
was
de Cuba
controlled by Batista.
cayeron bajo el control
It was
de
said
Batista.
that Guevara
Se
rounded up
decía
a
que
four-man
Guevara
crew, a technician, a
trabajaba con
former
solo
newspaper
4 personas,
reporter,
un
and
técnico,
two
un reportero
ex-announcers from
que trabajaba para
Havana's
un
popular
periódico
radio
y 2
Mambi from
locutores
among
de la radio
supporters.
popular en La Habana, de
And
Radio
all
Mambi,
ham
entre
transmitters
otros.
would do the
Con
broadcasting.
un viejo
Again,
transmisor
it challenged the
pudieron hacer la
domination of
transmisión.
foreign capital, the
Y así
bourgeois
retaron la
and
dominación
large
del capital
landowners.
extranjero, la
I'm
burguesía
sure
y de los
our guest
terratenientes.
speaker
Estoy
will
segura
tell
que
you how
nuestro
they work hard to keep
invitado
that
les
spirit
va a
of
contar
rebellion alive.
cuán arduamente
Thank you
trabajaron
very
para
much.
mantener el espíritu de la revolución viva. Muchas gracias. With this
Thank you, Daddy.
brief introduction, in which we heard some of the central elements, we're going to listen to the first remarks today, delivered by our colleague Pablo Kunich, coordinator from the ALBA TV Network.
The general organizer of the ALBA TV Network, which is one of the alternative TV stations in Venezuela. He will tell us about ALBA TV experience. Pablo has always been accompanying us in the broadcasting of all of our seminars to guarantee the online transmission of the seminar. Welcome, Pablo. Hello, good morning, good evening over there. Greetings to all the participants to the seminar. I am Pablo Kunich, and I am part of the editorial team of ALBA TV, an alternative national TV station that was born in 2006 within the context that was explained to you during the introductory words. We are a community TV station. We are the result of a public policy from the state. And after the coup, we understood that it was critical to have not only private and public media, but we needed to strengthen popular communication. In 2006, which was a very very eventful year in Venezuela, we organized a Congress on communication to discuss communication within socialism. More than 300 people from the communitary media in Venezuela participated, as well as other participants from Latin America, and not only communitary media, but also other kinds of spaces for communication of social movements. And one of the results of that Congress was that we were to promote a platform to articulate, to do networking, to do training in the field of communication in order to strengthen our communicational capabilities of the peoples. At that moment, we did not have ALBA TV. And from the Bolivarian government, we obtained support from the government, and a satellite was put at the disposal of the communitary outlet. This is a great opportunity because we have access to satellite signal, and the communitary media can have access to that satellite to communicate with the entire continent. So during that time, we made an official requirement of having our own signal. And we also roll out a training process in Venezuela and at a continental level as well of the social movements and communitary media. And little by little, we built an idea that during the first years of our endeavors, it was not an on-air signal. It was just a platform that was centered in producing contents in a collaborative manner, doing a lot of networking, and we were also centered in training. These were the two pillars. From 2006 until 2013, ALBA TV worked in its own signal. We were successful in doing so. And also after a national convention of communitary TV station, where we asked the government for that platform in contact with the communitary outlet could have a national own signal. And in 2013, then we obtained our own signal in the spectrum, the radioelectric spectrum. We could transmit on open TV, digital open TV, and we still have that signal, and we have been working with it. And ALBA TV, even though it is an alternative outlet, for us, it is important to build a new concept of the public sector, the public participation. We need to redefine the public sector and to give place for more participation. Of course, endorsed by the legislation that we already have, and endorsed by a strategic strategy in terms of the building of a communal state that Chavez bestowed to us. We considered that the popular outlets need to be under the control of the people and with the participation with the people. So in order to achieve this goal, ALBA TV has an editorial council made up by spokespersons from all the movements, social grass movements, pobladores movement, the Afro-descendant movement, the feminist movement, and sectors that are related to the educational endeavors, and we define our editorial guidelines. ALBA TV is not led by a small group of people, a handful of people. On the contrary, we build the editorial line as a collective. And this is what we have been doing so far, and we have been honing our strategies. But this is a fundamental tool. This is our understanding that a communicational outlet needs to tap from the participation of all the individuals and persons who participate in this endeavor. In other words, the people. We do not do proselytist propaganda. We do identify with the Bolivarian Revolution, of course, but we put the emphasis on the communal work, on the communal participation, the communal councils. The majority of our production is not created by the channel per se, but it is the result from common work with the social grassroots who send their contents, their programs, their music, and what we do is to disseminate this work. Another of our guidelines is training. We have been training people ever since 2006. We have rolled out a new initiative, which is the Communicational School Hugo Chavez. This is an initiative that goes back to the founding spirit of ALBA TV, which is to strengthening the communicational capabilities of the grassroots. And we have, so far this year, carried out some webinars and workshops with Latin American associations. And we keep on working in the training field oriented to the grassroots movements in order to empower the collective subject, so to speak. So this is a very recent initiative that we have proposed as a means to reach out and to connect with other experiences and training with other schools that also work in communication training. And we understand that even though we have made important progress in our strategies, the media onslaught against Venezuela by the mainstream international media is overwhelming. And in this new time of integration of Latin America, it is important to strengthen that communication, to do more networking, to connect with each other so that we can create our own narrative as peoples who are organizing and based on social movements. And ALBA TV is also a project that, even though it was created by the Bolivarian Revolution in the framework of our revolution, is not a state-owned. It is not a state-owned media that depends financially from any other institution. But we have been working with the state in terms of the technical aspects, guaranteeing that the ALBA TV signal is on air. But in terms of the financing of ALBA TV, or in terms of our guidelines or editorial line, we do not depend on the state. And over this last year, where we have had a very severe economic crisis, we have been working with those who believe in this project, those who are involved with our endeavors. We have a small video that we would like to play and to share with you. Building communication for the integration of other peoples, this is our goal, our horizon. We feel proud to be Venezuelans. We feel proud to stand in solidarity with Latin America, and we welcome ALBA TV, our public participatory signal. We welcome this new phase of this new project, our project. And we place our hopes on our people. So let's do it. We are ALBA TV, a channel in movement. So this is just a sample, small sample of what we do. Our motto is our channel in movement. And we have adopted also the motto, a window for the possible. We are experiencing very difficult times in our country. We are being harassed by the US empire. We are in the midst of very severe economic crisis, though we are placing our hopes in what is possible for us. And what is possible for us is to be made visible by the organized people in our day-to-day life in a collective manner. Of course, with critiques and difficulties and hardships. And ALBA TV also shows these hardships. We do not silence them. And our outlet is pretty much present in the social networks. Recently, we were blockaded by Twitter. The account that had more than 120,000 followers was blocked. And this has been a part of the attacks against the outlets, individuals in Venezuela. It's part of the media warfare against us. We have been censorship against us as a common denominator. They just want to silence the voices of the Bolivarian revolution. So in closing, I would like to say that we are centering our efforts in the grassroots movements in order to strengthen training. I didn't say this before, but TV is constantly carrying out activities like this one that we are today. We always participate in this kind of initiatives and a collaborative work. Over the recent years, we have participated in numerous activities in popular assemblies of peasants, continental assemblies, summits on climate change. So very numerous activities from the social movements, the grassroots movements, where ALBA TV has been covering those activities. And over the last 3 years, we have strengthened, thanks to that work, a network of producers, correspondents of ALBA TV in our continent, which has enabled us to cover, for example, without any kind of intermediation, directly, we have been able to cover with our own teams and from our own social movements to cover the coup in Bolivia, to cover also different struggles in Ecuador, in Peru. So the fact that we have been doing networking is a key component of ALBA TV's work. And thanks to this, we have become a voice which is made up by many other voices, a image that is linked with our networking, and that has guaranteed a diversity in our thinking and a coordinated voice or a collaborative voice at a continental level. So I am ready now to answer to your questions or further on. I would like to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you,
Thank
Pablo.
you for that information.
With that first intervention of Pablo Kunich from ALBA TV, we're going to have a second intervention. And I would like to remind to all the participants that through the Q&A box, you can write your questions. And at the end of each intervention, we're going to have 4 interventions. And at the end, we'll open the floor for answers and questions and receive some questions, answers, and comments from the participants. Well, we would like also to greet to all those people who have joined disconnection from different parts of the world. We welcome you to this 7th session that is focused on community media as an expression of the Venezuelan struggle, alternative, and community media. The second intervention we're going to have now will be delivered by our sister, Maryjha Morales. She is part of the National Association of Community and Alternative Media, a network that has been working hard and struggling in our country, Venezuela, and have undergone difficult situations, but they're part of this struggle. And our sister Maryjha will give us further information. Hello, good morning. Good morning and good afternoon for you. I hope you listen to me well. Well, I represent the ANMCLA, the Association of Community Free and Alternative Media, that was born as an entity for the articulation of efforts of alternative media after the coup d'etat in 2002 against the President Chavez. There was a complicity of private media in the coup, who back then denied the possibility of transmitting, of broadcasting what was going on in the streets, the demands of people who were asking for the return of Commander Chavez and respect for the Constitution. Collective, community and alternative media, all of these people devoted to diffuse the events in the streets with their portable transmitters, with the sound system that they connected to their cars, making wall paintings, denouncing that President Chavez had not resigned, and that the mobilization of the people in the streets towards Miraflores and towards the Bolivar Square, it was important to show the civic military unity that made possible the return of President Chavez to power, so that the revolution could go back to power. There were even organizations that devoted to go to the TV networks, to the regional and private networks, to denounce that President Chavez had not resigned and the people were in the streets defending the revolution. Once the power, the constitutional order returned, several of these organizations that coordinated during these days of April in 2002, they decided to found ANMCLA to reinforce these spaces for the voice of those who were working for a fair and sovereign country, and counter acting the patriarch communication that only shows oppression and violence, and highlighting the fact that those who work in popular communications are also protagonists of the communities in the search of solutions to their needs. So apart from broadcasting radio programs, all those who are engaged in a popular space of communication in Venezuela also were involved in the social programs, the activities of the party, and later on in 2006 and 2007, 2008, the communal councils and the communes were founded, and the social movements and community radios started to work jointly with other social movements to impulse these activities throughout the country. And for more than 10 years, ANMCLA, our organization, was present in more than 17 states of Venezuela, impulsing the democratization of the radio TV space that is a reality in our continent, because unfortunately it had been in the hands of the private capital. So we have been working in the democratization of the radioelectrical space to consolidate a popular communication system in the hands of the communities. Technology transfers, because we are aware that this is still a difficulty. The fact that we depend on imported goods of not having factories or workshops to repair TV and radio equipment. Also, among the things we have been working with are the several schools that we have throughout Venezuela, and on a yearly basis, something that I really liked were the multimedia camps we used to organize. Organized not only to our militants, but also for all the organizations that need to reinforce their communication process. So for a week in those camps, people were there exchanging knowledge and wisdom, workshops of video and audio edition, radio production, how to create a radio antenna, how to install it, serigraphy, wall painting, different workshops aiming at teaching people this type of abilities. Furthermore, in these multimedia camps, several debates used to take place about feminism, sexual diversity, among others. And also speak about the political situation back then, what was necessary to do. So these camps allowed the comprehensive training and capacity building of all the members of the community. People from the alternative media could participate in the different workshops, which these activities in the camp had the purpose of producing high quality content, because sometimes some people associate popular communication with low quality content, and that's not true. So in these camps, what we did was work hard and train people to be able to produce high level content, contents of good quality. So that this could be the outcome of this effort and a reflection of the needs of the people, of the community, of the social movement involved in the struggle. In 2015, some of the collectives associated to ANMCLA were participating with other participation in a campaign called Every Heartbeat It's Important. There are some difficulties of audio. It was a really interesting experience because the campaign aimed at reflecting our struggle and also the proposal of the members of these collectives to the National Assembly. What we were doing there was promoting the political project. So it was interesting, this campaign. Back then, unfortunately, these were the elections in 2015, and the opposition obtained the majority of the votes back then, unfortunately. But we are sure that for this upcoming election, they will have the opportunity to obtain a majority and approve laws that can reinforce community alternative communication. So we had another camp after in the mountains of Miranda State. This was organized with a school from the Ministry of the Communes, and the purpose of this camp was coordination and comprehensive training and capacity building in the communities, in the communal territories. So there were several initiatives associated to the communal media. A community newspaper was also born. There were some existing mechanisms in the communes, but there were no links between this community media. So this camp had the purpose of coordination so that they can know each other and know what each one of them do, and in the light of the crisis derived from the sanctions and the economic measures against our country, several community media members of ANMCLA were really affected and stopped receiving funds from the state for the repair of technical equipment due to the crisis derived from the sanctions. So several antennas and equipment were damaged. And at that moment, as an organization, we were not able to develop spaces for self-management to provide support to these media without having to depend on the state government or the regional government. So our self-criticism is that we need to develop sustainability, because unfortunately some spaces disappeared due to the crisis derived by the sanctions. I stopped listening to what she's saying. Please let her know that her sound is not working. She's mute. She's mute. She's mute. She's mute. Okay. Now she's turning on the microphone once again. Sorry, my bad. I don't know what I did. Anyways. So I'm going back. So those radio stations were able to survive and stick to the principles of the organization, because unfortunately some communication spaces stopped being community media and started to work with advertising or became more like commercial radios, some, no? But those who were able to survive back in 2019, they were able to organize once again a multimedia camp, smaller, without presence in the 17 states of the country. The dynamics have changed, but it was a smaller camp. So that same year and last year, apart from the multimedia camp, we organized an assembly of spokesperson with the presence of 36 community radios, radio stations, one community TV station participating with the participation of ALBA TV and a digital media outlet. This was organized and took place in Yaracuy state in the west of Venezuela. And because ANMCLA was very engaged in the political activities, we mainly work in Caracas, but now things have changed and we are also present in other states. So we organized this event in Yaracuy state and the assembly. In the assembly, we were debating, and it was important for me to tell you this topic. Sorry if I'm speaking too much, but I hope you are enjoying this exchange of experiences. We were speaking about the importance of regrouping ourselves and speak about these working commissions that we used to have. And so we were resuming these efforts and impulsing our spaces for communication to also efforts of production and of defense. These four important axes. We were working on communication, production, social life, and defense, apart from speaking about who were going to be part of the national coordination of our organization, ANMCLA, and the assembly of spokesperson, frequency of the meetings, the decision-making mechanisms, how we were going to relate internationally. So we were debating for 3 days all these topics. Also, we spoke during the assembly about how are we going to resume this idea of the public system of popular communication. So we were going to give shape to this project once again, and we were impulsing the alternative news agency, ANA, the name of a woman. Also capacity building efforts, the capacity building in technical topics. We were coordinating with IMSIS, that is an institution for technical training, and so courses that are organized with this institution is an institution of the state to continue teaching people how to manufacture and maintain radio transmitters. And we also started working about the self-management project. We were assigned a piece of land in Yaracuy State. We were negotiating a lot of land, a piece of land. So, but many people that are part of organizations are from the urban areas, from the cities. So some people, we were still discussing who was going to stop being in the radio stations in the city and go to the countryside and produce food. So with the pandemic, things became difficult, but we are seeing on how to work in projects now that we have received this land to develop agricultural projects, because it's important for us to guarantee that we can have sustainability. In the past, we were present in 17 states with our organizations. Now we are only present in 4, but we need to make our work sustainable, not only of our media outlet, but the whole system of communications, to have spokespersons in the communities that can guarantee the functioning of this alternative news agency. So in this assembly, we were also discussing the use of new technologies. So now we have internet radio stations. Some others don't have even access to good internet, but we were discussing, our radio stations. Some people love the microphones and love to be in the physical space of the radio, but we need to go beyond that. We need to understand that technologies and internet have broken the paradigm, and the internet is a key element to spread information and to be informed. We also debated a very important aspect, which is the role of these communication popular spaces and their relationship with the national, regional, and communal government. How can we do as radio to not only be a space of propaganda, but instead also to be a space for the production of communication that can be a reflect of what's going on in our communities, and not only what the government does. So a reflection of our own life. Each governor's office, each mayor's office counts on a radio station. So as a community radio, we are reflecting of our own role. Currently now, in 2020, in spite of the pandemic, we have made some remarkable progress. We have, from all these debates, we have concrete outcomes. We are developing a training center in Yaracuy that has this is a training center with several branches. We have a radio that is called Independencia Radio. Is creating a school for community reporters. This is in Yaracuy State. Also a diploma on alternative communication along with the University of Yaracuy, and we are supporting the communal unity. We are trying to provide our contribution to this organization of communes, and we're going to be present there supporting this popular communication space. And with a lot of effort and with a lot of joy, in spite of the difficulties, in the middle of power outages that are not programmed, and with sometimes a bad internet connection, a precarious internet connection in some spaces and in some of the radio stations, we are producing a weekly news feed from 12 meridian to 2 p.m., more than 30 radio stations of the country, some of them part of ANMCLA, some others not. They are organizing this news broadcast. that receives information from the communities, from the nations, from the different regions, that also is reflected by the alternative news agency. The alternative news agency receives this information, passes it to us, and I organize an international segment there. And there is some delay in the transmission. Okay. It's a space connected to the social network. So this news broadcast is really good, and it's not only performed in just one radio station, but instead it's organized in different radio station. We invite you to be part of this news broadcast. If you want to send an audio by WhatsApp, we can share that. We would love to share international news if you can send to us. And my experience in AMCLA, I used to work for Lara TV, a community radio station. I was working there in an informative program, a popular informative program. Uh, our commune is a strong commune, a consolidated commune, and it's very dynamic. There are projects related to infrastructure. There are projects related to the economy, projects related to women, with the elderly. So it's very active, our commune. So sometimes the community, the media outlets of the government don't reflect that. Maybe our national networks sometimes show something, but we thought it was important to reflect local news. It was necessary to create a space to show the people, for example, how people build their own houses, from the pillars of the house to the walls to the ceiling, what our community is doing, everything, how the house was created and inaugurated. It was necessary to show that from the dynamic of the community, how communities organize, how people pave their own streets, how they install their electricity installation. So we were doing this effort in 2012. So our station underwent difficulties of financing, and sometimes now it's writing just a note in the an informative note with a lot of effort because of the difficulties. But now radio work is easier than doing TV station work, because producing television is really complicated. So for us, it was really complicated due to the situation. But now I'm working in radio, audio productions for the radio, with this information program that is called Alerta Caracola. So Venezuela is always examining itself, taking into account what's going on. It's very important to look at what we are doing among us, and it's also important for us to know what's going on in other countries. So neoliberalism and imperialism is sieging also other countries, the coup d'etat in Bolivia and the reality in Colombia. So our international initiative, Alerta Caracol, was born how to show, with the idea of showing in Venezuela what's going on in other countries, in China, in Bolivia. So we started to coordinate with social movements to have an information program to give a space to the voices of people who are engaged in the popular struggle. That's the objective of Alerta Caracol, our international program, so that in the communes, people can listen how other people in other countries are struggling. There is a video, I don't know if it's gonna be broadcasted by Hernández. It's a video of minutes, but we're not going to see the full video. Maybe we can watch 4 minutes of the video. You can share the screen and show it. Because I didn't receive the link. Yes, share the screen and show it. Show some minutes of the video. I apologize because I wanted to share that with you, but I should have practiced this before, how to share the screen. Anyways, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity of showing you the history of our ANMCLA, of the National Association of Community Free and Alternative Media. There was something that I wanted to mention, and was that in 2012, during every election, I mentioned that year because I was more active in that year. But when elections come, we always make a simultaneous broadcast, not only the ANMCLA radio stations, but also allied community and alternative media. I think alternative and community media are a reflection of what's going on in the communities. During the blackout that took place in 2019, when we were without internet, there was a lack of connection of phones, there was no regional television. The blackout in my city lasted 5 days, and the only thing we had to inform people were community radios. So radios are fundamental regardless of technology and the era that we're living, and now is everything's digital through apps and phones. But I think radio stations are fundamental for us to speak with different communities and with territories where clearly there are no other ways of communicating. So even if we have difficulties with technology, radio is always at hand. It's very popular among people. For those that are driving their cars, they listen to the radio. In your house, you listen to the radio. There's a special link of people with radio, and the community radios have that function of showing what people are doing. So ANMCLA also works jointly with other radio stations. So that's why we receive news from other radio stations from other states that even if they're not part of our organizations, but they like to coordinate with us and feel that they have a space where they can listen and be listened. I thank you. I truly thank you for this opportunity of sharing experiences, to Hernan for this invitation, for this opportunity. And I hope we can continue enjoying all of these efforts. I'm going to listen to the presentation of UTOPIX, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it. Thank you, Mari, for the presentation. We are committed to share with you the video, the link of the video she wanted to show, and if possible, we're going to project it before the end of the meeting. And I wanted to make a comment, a previous comment. I was mentioning that there were greetings from several countries, and there has been a request by several sisters and brothers that that the members of the panels that we have today, so that they can share their contact details and their email address. Also your reports, so that we can transmit them in our radio station, so that people can be in contact with you. So there's a lot of interest in the participants today. It's very important to be in touch, to continue this fruitful exchange. Now, we're going to start with the next presentation. The brothers and sisters from Tattoo are not going to participate in this session because they have problems to coordinate, but now we're going to listen to the presentation from our brothers and sisters from UTOPIX collective, Oscar Vásquez, seems to have difficulties of connection, but I think his presentation will be possible. Oscar, are you there? Yes, here I am. Well, I wanted to send you my warmest greetings. Without further ado, I will start my presentation. Please let me know if you can listen to me or if the connection is interrupted. Thank you, Hernan. Let's share the screen. We are a platform. We are a platform of cooperative work.
Thank you very much. We are a platform of cooperative work in the fields of popular communication centered on graphics art. We have been working for 1 year, and we define ourselves as a community for communicative content. We use our section or our platform as a place where construct new ways of relationships with each other. And of course, this is linked with the Robinsonian philosophy. We started 1 year ago. We have been working for 2 years and trying to organize this platform because the promoting group is a community of volunteers, and we come from a previous experience, which was the Creative Commando, which we call the Creative Commando. And it's an experience that was created thanks to the Ministry of Communes in 2007. And we started first in a very combative approach, and then we started organizing our endeavors in order to produce in different ways. We had productions and other production or other strategy to have what we call communicational guerrilla, which is the work with the communes themselves. And we also worked actively with another collective, and we developed many initiatives, and we transmitted classics like Ranchi, many kinds of small productions. This Creative Commando, as we called it, was very productive. We believe that the words are our weapon, right? And our purpose was to cover all the events within our socialism. And we adopted the street narrative of confronting the national right, the international right from the wall. which is the space, the graffitis, the walls, which is the space that the community has preferred over time. And what we did is that in an arbitrary manner, we decided to do graffitis and to develop these visual tools in order to use the audiovisual material from great mainstream media, and we make it, we kind of adapt our own proposals with our own messages. These are some of the examples of the images that we print or we do on walls. Here you can see some stencils. Find this in the UTOPIX webpage. Here you can see some of the samples of what we have been doing. This is one image, "We Continue in Resistance." That's the title. That's what at the bottom, what it says, "We continue in resistance." And this is a symbol for the communities. And we circulated this through social network or other electronic media, such as WhatsApp, Instagram, etc. We also worked with these t-shirts, these images that we printed on these t-shirts, and the messages that we conveyed in them have to do with the revolutionary struggles. And of course, this echoes with our own struggles here in Venezuela. Here, some posts that were printed by the communes. And back then we had resources to do impressions or images, plotted images like this one I'm showing here, in order to remember, to remind ourselves of the importance of the Bolivarian thinking. So we have been working in several communities. One of them is La Pastora community, where we have been expressing our art. And we have made many efforts to develop infographies. This is like our trademark, right? Here you can see some of the logos that you can recognize. Some of them are very famous. One of the most important is the one of the 200 years of independence. We are very proud of that particular logo because people feel it like their own, and the communal centers in many parts of our country are using all these images in this model. You can see this image in the community works, the community documents. And we could print all this material when we were participating with friends. Here you have other examples, even calendars. We were able to print in calendars up till 2014. And ever since that moment, well, there was a change in the commando. The commando was not belonging anymore to the communes. We had more visibility, and we enlarged our network. But then the crisis started, and it wasn't possible for us to purchase the material we needed to paint walls. But we were successful in doing some posters, but it was very expensive. And now we decided not to depend on the state anymore, and we decided to work on our own. Then we thought it was important to have a kind of a office or a working center to start work in a more systematic manner for the liberation and the fight against capitalism. And we started looking for the solution. And we understood that that place was going to be a platform, that we needed to create a platform. There were others who did not want to participate in a closed structure that we had with the Creative Commando. Of course, there were some practices, meetings, and logistics in order to carry out the organic work of the militancy. And some of the graphic designers that wanted to work with us were motivated. They wanted to join us, but they were not ready to become militants. So the Creative Commando opened itself to several ways of participation and created a place and a space to center, to focus the content. So we divided our endeavors in three main pillars, or three main containers, so to speak. They existed ever since the time of the Creative Commando, but now we explain it better. And the first is the place where we gather our comments or stories from the past and from the present, using visual production. Using the tools that we have learned from the mass communications, but also questioning some of the principles of those mass communications. Here you can see a page of our calendar. This year, you can see this year's calendar and everything that you can find in our website regarding Morocco, for instance, and the struggle of the Eastern Sahara, where there are many tensions to convey the message of the Sahrawi struggle. And with this information, we made this poster to show their struggle. Here we have some illustrations, and I have to say that illustrators have been very active. The author of this illustration is Patricia, and also Forastero, who is part of a popular organization located in La Pastora. Here we have another Forastero illustration with the participation of other friends from UTOPIX. This is the page for the month of May, and you can see here an illustration from Aquiles Nasoa, who is a Venezuelan artist. And in September, we have a different illustration from Mao Zedong. And this illustration shows what happens in September. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot the artist's name of this illustration. Another poster from Daniel Duque that you can see here now. This is one of the most popular products, in fact. And this is just a summary of the production that we have been doing. The other pillar is our struggle, right? How we can struggle in this very complex situation. we give support to the struggles, and we developed some cartels in 2019, because in Latin America, at that year, there were many resistance struggles against the neoliberalism advance. So all these posters are free of charge, and we make them so that they can be reproduced in a very easy manner. Here, you have a poster of the Panama struggle, some of the mottos of Chile, Haiti, Colombia, and posters that we have made using serigraphies. And here you can see also all these posters that you can reproduce in a very easily manner. Here you can see, for instance, the poster that in this here we indicate the level of difficulty, the colors used, and we also use a separation of colors technique so that all other artists can reproduce this using these techniques. And we explain all the tools that are needed to do these posters. You can print it on paper, on cards, or using different kinds of impression techniques from serigraphies, the painting, the emotions, and the copyright. And we have some recommendations of the type of inks that you can use, or the better ones, etc. So, here we have another work. We are very proud of this work. It's a research that was conducted by Inés Zambrano. This is a monitor of a feminicide. And this is the page corresponding to January 2020. Every single month, the team registered feminicides for that month. And in the website, explain the methodology that is used to gather the data, the information. There are many sources of journalists, social network, and she explains how she uses that those sources to collect the data. And of course, everything is explained in our website so that everyone knows where the sources are and the credibility of the sources. And this is one very important product that we have created. And the government uses this page, but instead of proposing campaigns to safeguard women's rights, sometimes has been antagonizing with this information. But well, this is a source, a very reliable source of a feminicide, a phenomenon that is hitting very hard the Venezuelan society. But here you can see the layout of the material. And finally, we have the third element, which is how we work with our production. We are setting up an agency in order to sustain the platform. Our team gets payment, of course, but we also have voluntary work, which is very interesting. We are indeed very proud of the work that we have made with the logos, technical logos. It's a workshop that we conduct in 6 or 7 meetings, and all the graphic designers that want to participate in our workshops and are ready to join in, we gather some of the experiences of popular communication. We call this logo Utopia. And the first logo Utopia was a very interesting experience. Unfortunately, I don't have all the slides here in this presentation. I'm going to try to fetch them in my computer as I explained to you that Logotopia allowed us to give a trademark to some associations. And they asked us if it was possible to make infographics for them to explain what they do. It is not easy to explain what the Army does because the Army requested that service from us. What they do is that, well, they are a group of workers that goes to the factories of the state, and they seize these factories, and over 1 week they relaunch the operational capacity of that factory. They are like an army of repairmen, and they reactivate the different units of the factory. They revamp the factory. They relaunch the production lines of a factory that was out of service. They do not charge anything to do that. And what we have done with them is that we have provided them a graphic identity based on the concepts or based on what they do. After this logo Utopia, we did another Logotopia with the college university, the University of the Arts. We had some achievements there, and finally, we also produced Logotopias with 6 organizations. This is an ongoing work. I cannot show you that what we have designed for them because we would need their approval. But we have almost 20 graphic designers working in that project and anthropologists as well. And we also conducted surveys and workshops with 6 organizations, cultural organizations. One of them is the Pueblo a Pueblo organization, who works with the food planning, a popular grassroots organization to deliver food, which is a heroic experience indeed. And it is located in Carache, in the Trujillo Estate and the Lara Estate. Another association was the Lucha Campesina and Unión Comunera, Communal Council. We also incorporated another factory. Well, all these experiences have been possible thanks to the joint work of all these people. So we are very excited because all of them could be active partners in this organization, and they are going to decide what mottos or logos they are going to adopt And now we are going to create a manual, and we are to give them this material so that they can use them. So UTOPIX, as you can see, has built important relationships that have exceeded the traditional ways in which capital works. Under capitalism, I would be offering my services to a market, capital market, and it is going to be the property of a capitalist organization. But no, we are working with our peers, we are working among ourselves, those of us who have been severely hit by the neoliberal shocks and the neoliberal systems, work in cooperation with a different logic, because our relationship is an equal relationship. We are not working for capital, we are not working for the property or for the obtention or a surplus. So this is how we have been working. This is how we have been building our relationships with other organizations. And now I'm going to see if I can share with you the page, one page of FISES. This is our website. UTOPIX has different parts in this website. We have tools, schools, material that can be used by the grassroots for their struggles, such as stencils, manuals, some posters that we have created to be printed, or pre-designed stencils if you want to print one particular document, so on and so forth. The school is a place or a space where we have been systematizing our contents. And the endeavors to systematize our production has been considerable. Here we have the library section. And in this section, we reproduce some of the workshops. And if you want to donate books, you can do it, because we created this library section in order to do so. We have Bitácora as well. Here we talk about things that interests us. Also PICs, as you can see here, where we make publications of things that have had an illustration theme. Here, for instance, we have a text that was made by several artists. And we have the Moroccan wall. We have also an infography on Kino to pay tribute to his demise. And well, here in miscellaneous, so to speak, we have a section where you can see the experience of some graphic designers, some social activists that reflect upon interesting and common battles. And here we have invitations also to Logo Utopia initiative and how you can participate in it. We have a small version of this site in English. We have not concluded that English version. If there are people who would like to cooperate with us in this regard, we will be really appreciative. And also our social networks that you can see at the bottom. Instagram, the one we use more, which is at UTOPIX, UTOPIX CC _CC, and then the other website that you can see on the screen. So if you type that in the browser, you will find our website immediately. If there are comments or questions, I would like to close by saying that my participation in UTOPIX was made possible for the reflection I did myself on graphic design. And it is a question that every worker has to pose itself at some time in life when it reflects upon capitalism or the reason why we do what we do. So this trade that I do, this is what I thought, this thing that I can do, this capability that I can offer to the world is what really drives me. This would be a trade or a vocation that will make sense in a society that has abandoned capitalism. I will have to abandon what I do, to quit what I do after the disappearance of capitalism. At that moment, I thought I was going to quit. I was going to stop. But then I started meeting some artists, some graphic designers who had the same concern, because we wanted to produce something different from what we normally see. Production or art works that only are at the service of capital. So I think everyone has had this to answer that question in time. The origin of our profession itself is deeply rooted in the Russian Revolution and the Elochenko group, which was the political arm, the political part of the constructivist school. So this is my final comment for that question. That question is still open for me, but anyway, I am still in the quest. I just wanted to share with you these reflections and the work that we have been doing. Thank you very much.
Well, as I told you, there are several questions that have been raised during this session for our panel members. So while we solve the connection problem of Orlenys, while she solves the problem, I'm going to read part of these questions so that the panels can write them down and we can have a moment to make some closing remarks. And the first question is, how can we counteract the technology imperialist war that sabotage the radio transmissions of the community radios? What can be the strategy from the popular communication in order to counteract this? The next question is it possible to share material, images, documents about the multimedia camps you mentioned? And also, if you can share part of the contents that have been produced in these multimedia camps. Another question that was made was, is the right-wing private media the only expression of imperialism within the region? And the fourth question is, what's the percentage of influence of the public, progressive, and alternative media in the task of decolonize the reality in Venezuela? And the fifth question, Orlenys is connected, but I'm going to read the fifth question of the public so that we can take advantage of time. I'm going to continue with the questions. The fifth question is, the major providers of internet are Google and Yahoo and are located in the US. How can we deal with that? Do we have servers to have internet? Do we have our own servers? Orlenys, are you connected? It seems that she is connected. Okay, let's start with your presentation. Now that your internet is stable, I hope you can listen to me with enough volume. Yes, yes, we can hear you. Well, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Thanks to the previous presenters, members of ANMCLA, UTOPIX, and the organizers of this event. So let me share with you some notions of what we do in the digital field and the importance of what is done in the social media in Venezuela. My name is Orlenys Ortiz, and then I will share with you my details. I wanted to broadcast it in my networks, but connection is not strong enough. But I wanted to make emphasis in why it's so important, this issue of social media in Venezuela, and not only in Venezuela, but throughout the world, but in particular in Venezuela, because we are in a difficult situation, because a year in Venezuela is like 10 years in a different country, and it has to do with the constant dynamic of events. 1,000 events happening at the same time in our country. And I wanted at this point to mention something about how social media, for example, is managed in China, because in China they have a good level of autonomy, they produce their internet, because it's necessary for us to secure ourselves from the media manipulation of the empire. So we aspire to do what the Chinese do. So we are still like in diapers. We are still, we have still a long way to do, because we need to work to develop infrastructure. But even if we're using the tools of the enemy, if you like, and we have a solid presence in the social media. And in fact, President Chavez in the past invited us to be part of the battle in Twitter. Back then, I didn't have a Twitter account. I was only present in Facebook. And there was no interest in Twitter back then. But after Chavez created his Twitter account, everybody got interested. Even if we don't have the advantage of have a solid infrastructure of technology, like in China, we have a strong presence, but the impact that we can have in social media, such as Twitter, Instagram, we are very present there, and you can make a difference being there, and you're able to communicate many things. I want to mention about the impact of the social media in Venezuela. I'm going to mention some figures. We are about 29 million inhabitants. 20.5 million people use internet, and 12 million are active in social media. We are 29 million inhabitants, 20.5 million have access to internet, and 12 million people are active in the social media platforms. So 92% from these 12 millions are using Facebook, 35% uses WhatsApp, even if there's a growing trend for the use of Telegram. Telegram is becoming more and more popular. Then we have Instagram, 34% of users from these 12 millions, about 4 million users using this platform that has become more popular than Twitter. And TikTok is started to be used more. So we have about 20% of these 12 million using now TikTok. So there's a growing trend. and we will see more users of TikTok by the end of the year. And Twitter, that is like the place where there's a lot of controversy. Several days ago, President Maduro said, we're going to de-Twitterize us because we need to be present in other social media channels. But there's a reality undeniable about Twitter. 10% of users in Venezuela, even if you think there are more users of Twitter, that the whole country uses Twitter, no, only 1.3 million people use Twitter. But what happens with Twitter? That in Twitter is where you see the original news. So the news appear on Twitter, and the opinion matrices, the important national and international news appear first in Twitter. Because in Twitter you have all the political authorities and the political figures. So a tweeted by the president or and replicated by other people, it's going to be shown in Instagram. But the relevant media at this point appears first in Twitter. Obama, for example, was the first politician, internationally speaking, that was very active in Twitter than Trump. And so different situations derived from this. So you are obliged to be there if you want to be in contact with the news, because in Venezuela, we are suffering from a media siege. So we need to be active in Twitter to know what's going on. So as a country, if we disconnect from Twitter, still the reality is going to be taking place there. So we need to be there. We need to be clear about that. So we need to continue being there in Twitter, like we have been doing in the last 10 years and in the last 5 years, especially. So among the conditions I can mention in Venezuela, we have internet access is complicated here. Internet quality here in Venezuela is not that good. So I hope we can get an optimal internet soon. But there's a growing penetration of technology, precisely, that increased with the arrival of the Bolivarian Revolution and the arrival of Chavez, because he understood the priority of digitalizing our society and that we all need to be there. So there was an increase of penetration of technology in terms of connectivity at a national level, and also in terms of how many people have access to a mobile phone. In Venezuela, a research was conducted by CONATEL, that is the National Committee of Telecommunications of Venezuela, in which they informed that 60% of technology penetration in Venezuela, and is a figure based in general terms about the population, and they count even individuals from the 7 years of age, and most of the people uses internet from a mobile device. So CONATEL, the Commission of Telecommunications, said we are 29 million inhabitants, and there are 2 devices per inhabitant. There are more mobile devices than people in Venezuela. And that tells you a lot about the technology penetration in Venezuela and the conditions for digital communication in spite of the bad internet connection. So 81% of these people, and these are figures that I took from Hotsuite, that the users of social media connect from mobile devices, and others connect from desktop, but primarily from mobile devices. And this is why it's so determining and important to be present in those social media channels, because we know that the right-wing forces and people that are trying to siege Venezuela we need to call them because, you know, they try to alienate us from our childhood. So we need to counteract their action. And from this fact, there are initiatives to counteract this. When I was a child, I remember that on television there was a programming grid that never changed. So all the television networks, the private networks, were always showing the same: cartoons in the morning, then the news at noon, then 3 blocks of soap operas, then young series in the afternoon, and then again the soap operas at night. So they somehow penetrated, culturally speaking, the population, the private media. I'm 30 years old, and since 15 years ago, people can see different things. But for a long time, population were seeing all these actors of soap operas as references, but we're trying to revert this cultural trend. We see people that unfortunately are not able to question the information they receive from the media, and unfortunately, a large amount of our young people is alienated and using only social media for entertainment, not from the point of view of criticism or information. And you have influencers, people, you know, producing humor, music. This is the type of people that influence, unfortunately, our young people. So these people, these influencers are paid, and they promote certain interest brands. So, but they don't go beyond these young people. So unfortunately, you have these influencers somehow communicating news and even having an incidence on the decision making of people. And even the influencers end up promoting political interests or commercial interests. I'm having difficulties to listen to what she says, but now she's back. So social networks now have become fundamental in decision making in terms of votes, and we could see that in the recent elections. And social media, like in the case of Bolsonaro in Brazil, on the day of the elections, messages were sent through WhatsApp by the people of Bolsonaro, 5,000 messages every day to spread fake news and against the other candidates. So we need to understand this, and we need to see that the social media channels are not an option, are a true need. So it's necessary to be there, active, producing communication. The digital field, now that everybody has a phone or a mobile device, or most of the people has it, it's important for us to understand that we need to communicate what's going on. We know we are under a media blockade, and we need to break with that. So the social media channels, even if it's technology created by the enemy, it still can be a tool. I had a Twitter account and I was suspended, for example, in the past, because I was on the ground when the violence took place in our country in 2004. I was there in the events, in the middle of the opposition protest, showing the reality. So I was very intense in my Twitter account, and I ended up suspended without possibility to appeal the decision. Then I created another account, and I'm still connected, always communicating what's going on. So we have increased our presence in the social media to communicate everything that we need to say. And I was in Madrid and Barcelona last year for 2 weeks, and I was able to see. I don't watch television, so in my home I don't watch television, but I sat down in Madrid, in Barcelona, to watch television to see what kind of programs are shown there, what is said about Venezuela, for example, in Spain. And one of the things I realized was that it's not Venezuela that is suffering from the media blockade. It's the rest of the world that has media blockade about what's going on here. So people there in Spain and in other countries don't receive real information about Venezuela. They receive the image that is manufactured by the private media because they consider information not as a human right, but as a commercial good. So these private media don't transmit real information. So the only window that people has to receive real information of Venezuela are these media, social media channels, so that Venezuela is present in the social media. And since the Bolivarian Revolution took power, we have access to information in different media outlets, and we are always paying attention to what's going on in Venezuela and abroad. But then I realized that abroad is not shown what is going on in Venezuela. That's why it's so important coordination. That's why we can get familiar to what's going on in other countries. So we need to coordinate so that we can have peer-to-peer communication. We know brothers and sisters who are present in different countries of the world, and they're not only friends or relatives or colleagues. These are people that are organic work, who are promoting alternative policies. And I have articulated and coordinated with several people in different countries. So when there's an event in these countries, we have the possibility to get familiar with these situations, because back then I saw the importance of establishing alliances with fellow comrades in other countries, because there was not a habit for us to look for real information and go beyond the mainstream media. So you normally were reading information in official accounts of the ministries, because people were not interested in what was going on in other countries, or you were watching the news in private TV channels. So it was difficult to have access to information, to international information. And what we did was to establish alliances with brothers and sisters abroad. And now we continue establishing these alliances and exchanging information. We are coordinated with movements in Europe, people who are paying attention and organizing solidarity days with Venezuela. So these efforts have allowed us to break with the cliches on how we communicate. And I want to describe at this point what I do from my social media accounts, especially from Twitter. I'm going to share with you my contact so that we can follow each other. So in Twitter, one of the things we started to do, and many people ask me about the impact of social media, and what do you do for make things known, or how can you have certain influence? And look, part of what I said at the beginning, this is not a plan, or I didn't start with a plan. It was a need for us to communicate what's going on and take advantage of the position that we have in social network and communicate. The whole media industry has tried to install the narrative in the collective imagery that there's a humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, and especially last year with the whole crazy stuff of the Guaidó self-proclaiming, and each time we were showing something that was happening in our country by Twitter, either with a video or what I did in the last 2 years, that was the live broadcasting. And I'm going to show you part of this live broadcasting. People couldn't believe their eyes. People being constantly poisoned, and so frequently by the private media. When we were able to show a square in Caracas with people dancing, people were saying, no, that's not true. Some people, or if, for example, if I went to a restaurant and I showed people eating, some of these believers of the private media information were saying, no, that's not true. Because look, it's not that I'm saying that everything is perfect or that everything is all right every day. No, look, we have a crisis. We are living a severe multifactorial crisis that has intensified because of the international blockade against Venezuela and promoted criminally by the US. But look, since 2014, there was also a drop of the oil prices, and there was an economic crisis induced by the private sector in our country in order to inflict damage on the government. And so there was this idea of by the private media and certain sectors to promote an adverse image of Venezuela, and they were always trying to show scarcity of food, so promoting anger among the people. So, and then on December 15, back then in 2014, simply didn't vote for the opposition. So people vote to punish our government precisely because of all the poisoning and the fake news that were promoted by the private mainstream media, and fundamentally using influencers to do that on the social media, because obviously these influencers are financed by certain sectors. So it has been hard for us to counteract that influence. And something I wanted to comment, I want to speak about the economic migration of Venezuelans. So the whole international media efforts, they started to say that there was a massive displacement of Venezuela because in Venezuela it's impossible to live. They started to sell this image, and they started to to say that this was associated to the dictatorship of Maduro. So part of this starts from psychological operations using social media. Certain factors try to use Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to do that. So in 2007, when the number of Venezuelan economic migrants started to increase, you have professional Venezuelans that went to live abroad. There's a fierce campaign of advertising started with a lot of resources started to take place. So some companies were starting to promote the idea of telling Venezuelans, "Oh, come to this country or that country," to promote this idea of making Venezuelans leave. Psychological stimulation to Venezuelans to leave their country, and that it was a great idea to go and live abroad. I'm going to speak about this later on, but I wanted to mention it. So there was an influence of the social media in this increase of migration, and we, and I speak not only on behalf of those who defend the Bolivarian Revolution as a process, sometimes we just sit down and see how communication is made, and it's that communication is fast. We think that we say news only once and that the effect disappears. No, we need to understand and we need to insist in communicate actively and repeat it actively so that we can install opinion matrices, because this is what they have done. Because we need to position our information and our trends. Because I intensively communicate the plan that the government has that is called Back to the Homeland, where you have migrants that had difficulties in other countries. So the government had this program to bring back these Venezuelans that are abroad having a hard time so that they could be brought home. And at first, ACNUR, the High United Nations Commissioner for Refugees, was obliging the migration offices of Colombia to register the migrants of Venezuela as refugees. And precisely the UN establishes the difference between being a migrant and a refugee. And it is specified that this difference is important because the refugee goes away because he is persecuted, because there's a war, maybe. That person is a refugee, but the regular migrants don't enter into that conditions. The migrants normally are looking for better economic conditions in other countries because and there was Orlenys, sorry, you have 5 minutes left so that you can wrap up. Okay. So I was telling you that there's an influence of the media in our political life, and that is why it's important for us to be present in the social media. I want to show you some examples of the things we have been working with. Particularly, I work with 3 formats to defend ourselves from this permanent siege. One of these resources is the videos to show what's going on. Also, the second element is the live broadcasting. If I do a live broadcasting, they cannot say I am editing a video. And then the third is the description of the situations we are living. So I'm going to show you these videos. The first video is in an operating room, the social program that is called Misión Milagro, in which there are operations in the eyes of patients that have problems of visions. And this social program is internationally recognized. We visited a medical facility, a Barrio Adentro module, where these operations take place free for people without resources. We are entering here an operating room of Misión Milagro. This is a social program for operations for people with low resources. We are in the middle of a procedure, of a surgical procedure. Let's get closer. So So here I have a patient that a few moments ago, less than half an hour, was receiving an operation in the eyes. This is a medical facility in Pinto Salinas in the west of Caracas. How do you feel? I feel fine. This is the doctor that was operating him. How do you feel, Mr. Osvaldo? How the operation went? It was successful. How have you been treated? Great. Yes, he's your doctor. How do you see the attention of the Cuban doctors to the Venezuelan people? It was wonderful. It was wonderful. I have no complaints at all. So let's show you. He just got operated, so now he's going to recover. This is one of the videos I wanted to show you. We have been sharing this material for years. This is not shown by the mainstream media because of their political and economic interest. And it has been well received by many people. And it has been great for people to know what's going on in Venezuela. And even in Venezuela itself, it's hard to communicate this reality. And other types of things that I show have to do not only with the daily life, but also with key political moments in our country. And I'm going to show you something about this. Now, let me show you a live transmission. These live transmissions are a little long, but I'm going to show you only 30 seconds of work that we did through Periscope in Twitter so that you can see the format of what we do. These contents have become viral because people cannot believe their eyes when they see things live, because you know the mainstream media is constantly promoting information. In this video, I'm going to appear with Aranza Tirado, a Spanish comrade that has visited the country several times. This video I'm going to show was visualized by 14,000 people. And Aranza, who's a sister with a lot of influence, she's a politologist, and she was with us here in the Venezuelan streets. Well, while she's able to present this video, well, I'm going to make some comments about that video. It was the beginning of other videos shared by the colleague. We went to Farmatodo, the pharmacy chain. These videos became viral. There were lots of interviews about the daily life that is not communicated by the mainstream media, of seeing the Venezuelan reality from a different perspective. We were present during the carnival, festivities, all the daily situations that show that Venezuela lives normally, in spite of the economic blockade, in spite of the sanctions. So life takes place, I'm not going to say 100% normally, because yes, the siege and the sanctions affect us, but we are calm. People go and work peacefully, people go and study, people continue with their regular life. And obviously has to do with the inconveniences from the siege. If you cannot put the video now, no problem, we can.
Orlenys, can you hear us? Orlenys is having some. So if you can read the questions, maybe we could take some questions from China, and then I will answer I will take some of the questions that we have in the chat. Are you getting us? Orlenys? Since you had some problems with the connection, we wanted to, for the Q&A session, or would you like to make some closing remarks? We can't hear you. We can't hear you, Orlenys. So I suggest that we will take some questions, and then we will have you can make some closing remarks. So David, let's take the questions that you have received in the streamline, and then we will address the questions that we have from the chat here. David, if you have questions from the streamline in China.
Hernan, I would tell our experience with the progressive media. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, because we published an article about Venezuela communes, and the title is about the visiting communes in Venezuela, the intellectual resources of commune movement, which was published on 14 October in this year, and the newspaper is called Peng Pai, and this is we think that is a progressive newspaper based in Shanghai, and the hit count is the 430,000 in a week, and the paper, the name of that newspaper, Peng Pai, is not alternative journal. It is a mainstream news and commentary journal, but this column where we published the article is called the Market of Ideas, which has a focus on communities around the world, such as Rojava, Palestine, Cuba, etc. It also published David Graeber, Sami Amin, and Emmanuel Wallerstein. And the editor told us that the number of the first week when we published on October 14, that is the 430,000 in a week. But now we thought that there will be 500,000 people have read that article. And I showed you the share screen. Can you see the website? That is the name of the paper, Peng Pai. And this is the our article, which is the author has 4, Kunich, me, Yan Xiaohui, and Zhi Xiong. Yeah, and it's also show the Chinese version of the poster. So many fancy UTOPIX. Yeah, you see this one. Yeah, and we also saw quite a lot of pictures. This is Hernan, and the photos were taken in the communes. Yeah, and then we also use some photos from the Venezuela analysis. Yeah, and the we also visit the Auto de Alice. Yeah, and Kunich has an interview with the Telesud. The program is called From Caracas. Right. Yeah. And also visits the farmer market in Socopo, and visits peasant family. Yeah. And also we visit the ecological center. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Daddy. I will read some of the questions of the public. Donny Gutierrez asked if the inclusion of political thinking, Afro-descendant, indigenous, Pan-African thinking, is it a challenge to insert it in the mainstream or in the alternative media agenda? Another question is how to counter the media imperialist warfare, the way in which they sabotage our radios, and what would be the radio stations, and what would be the strategies. And also big companies like Yahoo, Google, that are located at the United States, how do the community networks and community TV radio stations deal with that? And how can they express the subjectivity of Venezuela in general another question is, the right wing are the only ones handling control over the media? Or another question is to share more images on the multimedia camp, etc. So those were some of the questions that I have in the question box. Let me check if there is another one missing. Carol asked from Canada if we have changed today's time for our workshop. No, we didn't change our schedule. We are transmitting from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m. in Venezuela, which is the equivalent and from 9 to 12 at night in China. So these are the questions that we have from our public. We will give the floor to our panelists, and we apologize with Orlenys because she couldn't close her presentation because some of Wi-Fi connections, but we will start with Pablo from ALBA TV, and Maryjha will take the floor after him. Yes, to start with Yannis' question in terms of incorporating the indigenous agenda in our communication strategy. For us, this is a fundamental aspect. We understand that we need to decolonize communications, but I also believe that this is possible from the alternative outlet, but we also need the public outlet to join the effort in terms of decolonization. Decolonization needs to go hand in hand with empowerment of the grassroots, the organized people. Otherwise, we won't succeed because we are disputing power. This is how they have colonized us. They have colonized us through culture, and we need to revert this in order to take away power from them and to be able to unleash our own processes, our own contents. In the case of ALBA TV, this is part of our main guidelines, decolonization, understood as a process and not as a mere declaration or a statement. In order to move forward this agenda, we have constituted an editorial council with the participation of Afro-descendant organizations, women's organization, feminists. So it is more than only words. It's our actions that have been deployed. And in terms of the sovereignty in technology, we have had some hindrances in the integration of our strategies. In Latin America, we have had some difficulties. I remember that in UNASUR, there was a proposal made by the media, social media and social movements to networking to have also optic fiber connection in order to be fully sovereign, because we will not attain sovereignty if we continue to use the US servers and the US connections. So this is what we need to do. This is a pending task. And over the last coup d'etats that we have seen and the impeachment processes in the continent and the destabilization processes that we've seen in Latin America are due to this task, to this pending task in terms of communication. I'll just give you the example of Ecuador and Brazil. The media have played a major role in those political processes. And the fact that we did not advance in our agenda, in our communicational agenda in those countries has led to that result. So communication is essential to the people's sovereignty, and we need to dispute this. We need to take this power from the mainstream media. This is a pending task that we need to face, because all those political mistakes have consequences and repercussions, because if we do not take control, the mainstream media are going to be the protagonists of the political events, and this will hinder our progressive causes in our countries. Thank you, Pablo. I will give the floor to Maryjha. Can you hear me? Yes. Well, there were questions related to the sabotage against some of our radio stations. Yes, sometimes the signal is sabotaged by commercial radio stations or religious radio stations. We have been making many efforts from CONATEL, which is the national body of regulating the radioelectric spectrum, so that they can address the problem. But so far, we do not have a law on popular communication that will enable us to have a quality signal. Our equipments have low power, and of course that we need to improve our equipment, because we have constantly interruptions and we have been sabotaged many times. So we need to guarantee the people their right to be informed with their own voices. So this is a dispute that we are leading. This is a battle that we are waging still today. Of course, we have always been prepared, but in case of an invasion, in case of a coup d'etat, we have always been ready. I would like to speak about all the strategies, but I don't have the time. But we do have strategies to connect with each other. We have debates, we conduct meetings, we have protocols in case of technical problems. We have been debating over all these issues, and should there be a war scenario, because we have had experience with violent manifestations and demonstrations that we have had, and we have had the opportunity to prepare ourselves in this regard. Now, regarding the question on the camps registry, there are some weaknesses, of course. Have shared with you several links, not only of our social networks, but I have also shared with you some websites where you can follow the news, and it is about to start here in Venezuela. It's at 12 noon on every Wednesday. I also left some links of some radio stations if you want to listen to us. And I also left a web link of ALBA TV station. As I said, that TV station has had some difficulties in order to produce contents. And they, in spite of this, they have some camp registry, and there are other links that will lead you to some of our partners, but unfortunately some of them are not in our country, but they have also a very interesting experience to tell about the way in which the Bolivarian Revolution was organized at the beginning, how people were working together, were networking, were working on the territory. So those are stories that you can find that are very interesting in those links that I have just left in the chat box. I don't know if you want me to share this information through a different WhatsApp group or emails. I'm happy to do so. There was a question also about decolonization and how can we extend our South relationships and our Pan-African networking efforts. There is also the language issue. I have been criticized by my partners because I have been broadcasting information from our friends in Haiti. They speak Spanish, but not so well. And well, I always say that we need to make an effort to understand each other in spite of the language. You have to be willing to understand the other people's situation and try to communicate with whatever means. Sometimes I have been sending audios in Portuguese also. I believe that the language cannot be a barrier for us to communicate. And these are some of the difficulties, however, that we can encounter in the radio station. Well, this is what I wanted to say. Thank you very much. I think that Oscar is not there. Well, he's back. And I don't know if Orlenys is back. She had some problems originally, but I will give the floor to Oscar, and I am going to also incorporate some of the questions that we have in the chat box. And hopefully Orlenys will be back. There is a question that I'm going to read from the chat. In terms of political training, what needs to be done so that the left-wing governments can acknowledge the importance of alternative media and can better face a coup d'etat? This is one of the questions. Then we have another question over here. What is the strategy, globally speaking, to counter the wave of disinformation of the alternative outlet? There are some comments on our participation. There is a proposal of a frame time to subvert the reality from the hegemonical media and the ideas they have disseminated. And in China, do you have difficulties to use Twitter? The opposition has used Twitter for their attacks. This is a question for our friends from China. And well, everyone here can give an answer to that. Oscar, would you like to comment on this? Would you like to make some comments? Oscar, are you there? So there's one question about the global strategies to counter the wave of disinformation. And another has to do with the political train, and are there advances in terms of alternative communication? And the last question was regarding Twitter. If you had difficulties of using Twitter, or have you been antagonized in the use of Twitter by the opposition? I would like to talk about the strategies. It is probably not a very helpful comment, but I believe that we have not been moving forward as we should have. We are leaving behind with regards to the technology, not only physical technology, but also biotechnology, those applied sciences that are used in political marketing, because we can no longer say that in the communications field there are no creative efforts. Of course there are. So our partners who have joined in our effort, in the effort of popular communication, for us, it is very important that they know about several fields such as psychology of the masses, data engineering, data science, and statistics, and how rumors work, etc. So I think that we have some weaknesses in this regard, because we are facing a machinery that is investing many more resources globally. And sometimes we believe that we can wage the war without technical knowledge. But the truth is that in some aspects, in some instances, the strategies that we have used and that work today, we have deployed them at a very small scale. Because if we only limit to our personal experience or to our own territory, we would not be reaching out to a larger audience. We have to go beyond our own territories. Because there are things that are happening here that can transform other experiences, but we're still bombarded by the enemy, so to speak, that sometimes knows us better than ourselves. We cannot fool the wizard, so to speak, because the wizard is always trying to fool us. So we need to take a step forward in order to be empowered with this psychological neuroscience knowledge, the knowledge of social communications. This is something that we lack of in spite of all of our efforts. Sometimes we just, we dare to be ignorant because we believe that our truth is being disseminated in Twitter, but we are not really doing what we need to do in order to break the media siege and the media hegemony. The truth is that they know better than us than ourselves. If you are going to unleash a guerrilla against a very powerful military, you are not going to be successful. You need to know your enemy, and they know us much better than we know ourselves. The only advantage that we have is the communication power. So we are very powerful in terms of the physical contact with our population. And here's where we have some advantage because we are close to the people. We are close to the grassroots organization. And if there is no efforts from those grassroots trying to open that window of opportunity through Twitter, through the community radios, we will not be successful. We have to occupy all those places, but we have to be even more assertive in the way that we define our strategies. This is one of the contributions that I wanted to make. This is just for us to reflect upon, to rechannel our efforts. We have to move forward to a radical proximity with our population and to the massification of our strategies at the same time. Thank you very much. Just for you to make some final remarks. Yes. Regarding the question of how to deal with the government? Well, I think that we have a lot of political will on the role of popular alternative media. So it is very important, the debate that is being done in Venezuela in terms of the communal state, which raises the issue of a new democracy. And I think this is a clamor of the populations. We have seen this in Chile, we saw this in Peru last year, in Ecuador. So people are demanding better and more democracy, which entails more participation. So the debate on the alternative outlet, the alternative media, goes hand in hand with the political dispute for a true participatory democracy. So this was just one comment I wanted to do in closing, and to remember that we are engaged in that struggle, a struggle for more democracy, more rights, so that we can attain a more sovereign communication. And in terms of what Oscar was saying as to how to act in the future, even if it is a grim future, or it looks like to be a grim future. Well, I think that it's important to bear in mind that we need to strengthen our will to move forward in our struggles. It is also a moment to prepare our attacks and prepare our ability to continue communicating. And in my view, there are two processes that are occurring simultaneously. The democratization, in other words, more people empowered with the tools, the capability of generating narratives, etc., in a greater number. And this comes from Marxism, quality and quantity. And on the other hand, the specialization, what Oscar was just mentioning, which is important. We need to democratize, to massify communications, but we also need to specialize communications in order to wage this battle that is using increasingly, in an increasing manner, technology, so that we can have a full participation. So this is my final contribution. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pablo. Thank you very much to our friend Maryjha from ANMCLA. Thank you to Oscar Vásquez from UTOPIX. We are very grateful with Orlenys Ortiz. Unfortunately, she had some connection problems and she couldn't finish her presentation. And she could not join us for the Q&A session. But as a final comment, I wanted to say that taking into consideration everything that has been mentioned, there was a question on Twitter. And as I said, or someone said before, Twitter is been used to attack Chavismo. It's one of the social networks that has been increasingly used to do so. Not only is the case for our country, or is the case of all the Bolivarian organizations that have been attacked. Twitter has a political use in Venezuela and a use in favor of the right interests. And I think this is important to say. We have to denounce this. And in my final remarks, I wanted to include another key factor, which was the exchange that we could have in the chat, the people who have participated in the chat and questions and answers. I hope that what we have said today has contributed to the networking of our different processes and to contact our communicators, because it is important to say that even in Venezuela, if there has been a greater mobilization in terms of the awareness, the importance of this communication dispute, and to empower ourselves with our own ideas and cultural processes, we have to say that there have been also some organization. But as our friend said, it is never enough. Even if we advance slowly, we cannot stop. Let's pursue moving forward. Very well. So before we close this meeting, I would like to thank our partners, the translation team that always make an important effort so that we can understand each other, understand what's being said during our meetings, to thank our panelists for their very interesting presentations, for the diversity of the ideas that were raised today. And especially I would like to thank our friends from China who have followed us, even if it's almost midnight, some 1,800 people following us from China. And I would like to invite you for our next session. In the next session, we will have a meeting on the electoral process in Venezuela, what is at stake, how elections are going to roll out, and what has been our experience in that matter. We will have some of the authorities of the National Electoral Council who is going to speak on the electoral process, and later we will have the opportunity to share our views with some analysts on what is at stake in the Venezuelan elections. So thank you once again. Thanks to the audience. Farewell and greetings from the Bolivarian Venezuela. Greetings to all of you. And as we always say, commune or nothing, we will prevail.